Chris Zeleny. Welcome to In the Element. Join me as we get insights from key individuals within the Dicker Data and HPE ecosystems.
Justin Farrow, HPE Solution Architect for Dicker Data, based out of Melbourne. Work across a lot of the southern region, but we share pretty much a whole patch across Australia really. So we've got guys in Sydney, New South Wales, up in Queensland and also in Victoria. Customer facing resource for HPE channel partners to leverage whenever they need to. And another part of my role is as a HPE ambassador. So I work across not just the local HPE community, but also into the head office and the other parts of the regions of the world, and work across an ambassador role for bringing new information, new infrastructure into the local region. So Hyperconverged came about, I think, from a need from two factors really. Factor number one, simplify technology in the data center. At the moment, or before Hyperconverged came about, there was probably 3, 4, 5 different technology stacks across your servers, probably more than that even, across your servers, across your storage, across your networking, backup infrastructure, backup applications, lots of different technologies that all get sort of put together into the data center to create infrastructure that can be used for applications actually taken out to customers. So Hyperconverged is tried to simplify that. Then there's also the other reason, which probably ties in the same thing, about simplifying management of the solution. What we do now is we're reducing hardware down to just x86 servers and software defining that data center. So storage coming into it from local storage, distributor across multiple x86 servers. Then we also have our compute and our memory across those servers as well. So the whole hardware stack's collapsing right down into those x86 servers. We're reducing power consumption, we're reducing data center heat as well. So, our cooling costs are going down, and we're really reducing that management stack. So instead of having to have 5, 6, 7 maybe technology specialists within an IT department, we can now look across maybe just some virtualization specialists or general specialists. Okay, so they can then work across the VMware stack. And when we talk about Simplivity is supported across VMware architecture. So that can be VMware specialists, and from there, they can then deploy servers, they can deploy storage, they can manage the back-end infrastructure and work across the whole solution. So Simplivity is one of our strong and main hyperconverged platforms that we have at HPE. It's based on HPE ProLiant servers across the DL range, so 1U and 2U form factor, HPE DL325s and DL380 ProLiant servers. We call them SVT325 and SVT380s, but we get across both the AMD and the Intel platform. So we've got a good flexible solution across that architecture. Simplivity has a lot of key features that other hyperconverged vendors predominantly don't have. They have a lot of the strengths that Simplivity has, but Simplivity goes above and beyond as well. We distribute our storage across our nodes, and we have resilient storage from that factor. So we're writing across multiple storage or Simplivity nodes or hyperconverged nodes. What Simplivity does on top of that as well is we have hardware RAID underneath. So every single node protects the data within that node as well. So we can lose up to 4 simultaneous drives in a Simplivity node and still have all services available. That's one of the real key selling factors of Simplivity. We drive a more resilient factor, which also means that we can actually have a denser production cluster. So Simplivity solutions start from a 2-node cluster. Predominantly other vendors, they might support 2-node in a robo environment, but when we're talking about the data center, they're recommending 3 or 4 nodes as a starting point. We can start that at 2 nodes, as I said. Key feature number 2, Simplivity has inline data reduction through deduplication and compression always on, and also workload optimized. So we try and keep our virtual machines local to our data. But what happens with our data efficiencies is that we'll only ever write a block of data once. Unique blocks of data is all we'll write into a Simplivity cluster. So if a block comes from one application, gets written down onto the physical storage. If that same block comes from another application, we won't write that down to the physical block. We'll just put a pointer in, track the metadata, and then we can actually do it. HPE Simplivity has a really strong backup ecosystem, which provides a really deep level of data protection. We go across an integrated backup product. So Simplivity has its own internal backup system that will back up a virtual machine 1 terabyte in under a minute. A lot of the time it's less than 10 seconds, and we can restore at the same speed. So from local backups, we can then do replication of our virtual machines to what we call a federated cluster, or a second VMware cluster. So that can then replicate our virtual machines outside the production cluster into a DR environment, or we can do it through a manual process as well. So we've got local backups and remote backups of our protecting our data. From there, we also have integration into HPE Store Once appliances, which is our backup appliance, which does deduplication on top of the Simplivity deduplication in some instances with our Catalyst data stores. So we replicate from our Simplivity production environment our virtual machines to our HPE Store Once Catalyst data store. And then on top of that, we can take those Store Once Catalyst data stores into our cloud offering with HPE Cloud Bank, where we're replicating our storage into a cloud presence at the same time. So we can get local backup, remote backup, external backups with Store Once, and then also we can take that into a cloud for a cloud-based backup. So we're really covering our 3-2-1-0 backup policies or recommendations as it's talked about in the industry. So then we come to our DR piece. We provide a product called Rapid DR. It's a lightweight, very powerful product that sits on top of the Simplivity solution, where we can automate and orchestrate our DR failover and failback, but also our testing processes, and provide reports back to CEOs, executives around how we have tested our DR strategies, and we have evidence of how our DR strategies work. So when it comes time to actually fail over, we know it's going to be successful. And that's through our product called Rapid DR. It's based around a virtual machine license, and it's in 25 virtual machine blocks. So it's a very cost-efficient solution, but very powerful at the same time. So Simplivity scales not only out from within a cluster or up with internal storage, but we can also scale across remote geographical locations. So we can have what we call a Simplivity Federation, where we might have a Simplivity cluster in Melbourne, we might have one in Sydney, we might have one in Perth. And we can link all those together, and we do deduplication across those platforms and those sites as well. So that provides us with a very efficient storage platform where we're only writing unique blocks across multiple sites. However, we also provide a DR and multiple points of recovery for our Simplivity solution. So in that example, we could be backing up or replicating our Melbourne virtual machines to Sydney. We could be replicating our Sydney virtual machines to Perth, and we replicate our Perth virtual machines to Melbourne, which means we have local backups and we also have remote backups. And then we can recover across either file level, virtual machine level in that environment. And so providing a very strong grouped network of what we call federated clusters. And that's where Simplivity Federation has a very strong value for lots of customers with lots of different sites. And then the beauty about that whole solution is that we can manage that through a single vCenter environment, where one person sitting in Melbourne could be managing Sydney cluster, could be managing the Perth cluster and the Melbourne cluster, and see exactly what's going on across all those clusters. They can deploy a virtual machine in Sydney, or they can replicate a virtual machine from Melbourne to Sydney. They could create a new VMware data store in Perth, all from sitting in Melbourne within that one single management console, being the VMware web console. Yeah, and on the DR side of things as well, we also have a really strong message around data protection and ransomware. When we're doing our backups to our HPE Store Once products, our HPE Store Once with Simplivity supports immutable backups. So once the data's backed up, it's protected, can't be removed. We also have a really strong value around ransomware. The way we write our data, ransomware and internal hackers aren't really aware of it. They can't see the underlying object store that Simplivity is based on with our data virtualization platform. And there's a couple of different levels within that data virtualization platform that means that the data is hidden underneath. We have a presentation layer which the virtual machines see. However, then there is a file layer and object store underneath that, and that's where the real data is sitting. So anyone that comes in and tries to destroy our Simplivity solution from a data perspective, we still have the underlying data. If anything's encrypted, it's a new write, so we can roll back to the old thing. So we just need to roll back to our last known good backups. If we catch the ransom or the attack fast enough, we can roll back within 5 minutes. We have a really strong value around that. And then if we have to, we can roll back to our immutable backups as well that are protected on our external store once appliance. With our remote replication and our copies of our virtual machines going to a DR site, they're also protected. And the backups are hidden. We're not looking, or ransom attackers aren't looking for backups that are sitting within a Simplivity cluster. They're looking for maybe a backup vendor or a backup application that's on there that they can go and destroy those backups as well. So a very strong data protection piece from a very simple product at the same time. HPE InfoSight is a product that HPE have developed, and it's all about using AI to find certain traps. I mean, in a strange way, you could call it your fairy godmother from a infrastructure perspective. It tracks your infrastructure, it shows hardware errors, hardware faults, provides access into your support contracts, provides access into any sort of support cases you might have, but it also provides a gatekeeping solution around issues that are in the field and in the wild and making sure they might not happen to you. So if you're trying to deploy a certain firmware into your environment, and InfoSight would be aware that potentially it's a match and it's okay to deploy, or it might be an issue with that, it might be incompatible. So InfoSight will actually blacklist that firmware version with that operating system. When it comes to Simplivity and the HPE ProLiant servers integrate into InfoSight as well. So we can track the hardware contracts of the solution. We can also track from a Simplivity perspective the performance. We can track when those nodes may be coming out of support. But at a more critical level, we can also track capacity trending, and we can see how your Simplivity storage growth is going and when you may run out of storage, and be able to notify you of when you might need to actually look at upgrading either the Simplivity nodes themselves with additional storage or putting in a new node from a scale out perspective. So if you want to get in contact with us at Data to learn more about Simplivity, or if you've got an opportunity where you think Simplivity will fit, you can get in contact with us directly through sales@dicadata.com.au, or if you already have a general BDM from a Data perspective or an account manager, reach out to them and they can put us in contact with yourself.